Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to another Shoe Snob video series, One Take Wonders. Here we are with a very important and interesting, scary, important topic. And finally, I'm making another podcast. I'm so sorry that I average one every 6 months. I don't know. Podcasts usually take longer. I'm usually scrambling to find my time. And every time I want to set a new routine, something comes up and my day just gets bonkers and I don't end up doing anything that I wanted to. But here we are, because this topic is very important. It affects me and it might affect you, and it's affecting the whole world. And this is about the newly instated tariffs on US consumers and companies, really more companies than anything, in my opinion. I'm both the consumer and the company, so I kind of look at it from a company's perspective, more so because that affects my immediate life. And that's what also helps me understand how to share it with all of you. So yes, the new tariffs imposed by Trump. And please, this is not a political podcast. I'm not here to share any opinions on that. I'm here to talk about how these new tariffs will affect the shoe industry. All of you and brands like me. So I'm also not an economist, so I'm not here to give you predictions or talk about any of that, but really just to understand that if what happens stays in place, what are the effects of those long terms by brands like myself and passed on to the consumers. So I'm going to try to talk about this again as the owner of a shoe company in America that produces in Spain and imports the products from Spain, and then how that translates to all of you. Now, other brands similar to me would be Cobbler Union, would be Carmina, would be, I guess those are the Spanish ones, Spanish made ones that sell shoes in America. Now, there are more brands, of course. There's Italian brands, there's brands in France, but there aren't a ton of French brands that have presences here, so that they'd be shipping from the EU, which is very different. So we have two different things going on. We have tariffs at a 20% rate for EU goods. We're going to stick with EU goods. Most of the shoes in this industry come from the EU. And I'll touch on the Chinese and the Indian ones as well, which, of course, I worry less about that because I'm directly affected by the EU tariffs, but we'll touch on that too. So, for example, I'm going to talk as the business owner. So when I buy my goods right now, let's just say the invoice from the factory is $10,000, right? I have to pay 5% import duties on $10,000. That's $500, right? That's plus some fees, whatever. But the import duty is 5% for Goodyear welted shoes. Boots are usually taxed at 8%, sneakers are 10%, etc., etc. 5%, let's leave it at that. 5% for low shoes coming from Europe. Now the tariff is supposedly a 20% tax on top of that 5%, right? So 20% of 10 grand is now 2,000 plus the 500. So I now have to pay 2,500 for said goods, coming to a total of $10,000 worth of value. So $10,000 has now become $12,500. Let's just leave that there. That means, they've all gone up in my cost price, my landed price. So usually a business will create its retail price from the landed price. Landed. So a lot of people think cost is the price, but that's not the price. Your real price is your landed price. That means the cost of the shoe, the shipping, the import tax, and any fees associated with all of that. So really, cost prices don't mean anything. Landed price is really what you judge from. So if my landed price is 200 and I want a 3 times margin, which is pretty small as a margin in the world of fashion, sadly, our small industry of welted shoes has a very small margin to work with. So if my landed price is 200, that means my suggested retail price should now be 600, right? And if I now have to pay 20% more, well, you guys can do simple maths, but simple math, I say maths like the British, simple math like the US American way, to kind of calculate that. Now, that doesn't mean necessarily I'll raise my prices 20%. And this is what we're kind of discussing in this podcast. How will brands react and what that means for you? So I now just shared it as a head of a shoe company. Now I'm going to share it as an individual buying goods from a European brand and then buying goods from an American brand who makes in Europe. All right, so if I'm Joe Schmo Googling Septem Lager shoes, Septem Lager shoes, on their website says $400. Add to cart, checkout, spend, buy, ship. Now, America has what's called, I forget the Latin name for it, but they have a $800 exemption for imported goods. Historically, this was for every country, but it's no longer for China and Hong Kong. I will get back to that. So I'm buying goods, shoes from Septem Lager from France, shipping from France, and I now receive the goods. They're $400. They fall under the $800 exemption, so I pay nothing. So me buying goods from brands in the EU online that sell for less than 800, my life is not affected at all. Now, let's talk about brands, for example, like Carmina, myself, Meerman, Cobbler Union, Ferragamo, Santoni, you name it, the ones that produce in the EU, ship to America to whatever Carmina store, Meerman store, Cobbler Union's warehouse. I don't actually know if Cobbler Union ships from Spain or America, so let's leave them aside. My shoes historically, right? Brands that make in the EU import in the US to then distribute outward. So, as I mentioned before, as a brand owner, I have yet to receive a bill, so this is all hearsay until I finally see that bill. Supposedly, my shoes are now 20% higher. Now, me, Carmina, Meerman, we all face the option. Meerman, sadly, I don't know if Meerman ships from their warehouse in China or from their warehouse in Spain. Either way, they're affected. They're better affected if they ship from Spain, worse affected if they ship from China. But either way, we now have a dilemma. Do we absorb 20% and leave our prices the same? Do we raise our prices by 10% and absorb 10%? Or do we just raise our prices by 20? Now, of course, you could have any fraction between there, but that's kind of, let's just put those 3 options. Those are the most logical ones. No change, split the cost, or share the cost to the consumer, or pass the cost to the consumer. Now, brands with high margins might be able to absorb those costs. Think your Ferragamos, your Santonis, they probably sell at a 6-7 times margin. They might be able to absorb 20%, take a hit, and ride it out, ride it out until whatever change there might be made. Carmina, probably less likely. Carmina is a big brand in our industry, but they don't have 7-8 times margins. When you are really hitting the clients over the head with a fictional retail price, you can absorb stuff like this. But when you have an honest retail price, a 2.5 to 4 margin, 4x, so again, what I said earlier, from 3 margin is if you buy at 100, you sell at 300. If 4 margin is if you buy at 100, you sell at 400. The smaller your margin, the harder it is going to be to absorb this. So then you have to think, now you say, do I want to split this cost? Because doing a 20% increase is a lot. And it really sucks to do it. As a brand owner, you don't even want to do it. Hey, I love the idea of making more money, but I don't want to do that. It's crazy. It's a huge overnight change. And especially hurts a brand, for example, like mine, that is only 13 years old and doesn't have 100 years history and client base behind it. So again, to put this into perspective, for you buying shoes straight from European brands under $800 won't change. Sadly, if you buy, now if you buy a St. Crispin's that is, let's just call it, I don't even know their prices anymore, but let's just say they're $1,500, right? In the past, 5% of the $1,500, again, I don't really buy stuff over $800, so I don't know if there are added fees as an individual. I've never paid import duties as an individual, only as a company. But if it was $1,500 and there's a 5% tax, you paid $75 for that shoe in added taxation for importing those goods. But now you'd pay just shy of 400. So I think 375, 1,500 divided by 4, whatever that is. I can't even do good math anymore. I used to be really good at math. Go figure. 375. Like I said, I had it right the first time. 375 now is what you pay for that. So your $1,500 shoe is $1,875. Anything under the 800 remains unchanged. But now you go to the shop. This won't happen in a day, in a week, probably not even a month. I dare say that everybody is somewhat in a panic mode, but it hasn't hit yet. You know what I mean? And you don't really panic until it hits. You get that first bill and you're like, oh my goodness, $10,000 invoice is now $12,500. So until those hits start coming, brands are probably brands like myself. I am directly included. I'm now thinking, what do I do? Can I somehow ship from Spain? Can I somehow avoid it? If I can't avoid it, do I absorb it? Not really, because my profit margins are not big. They're not 3. So do I share? How do I divide it? Do I absorb 5% past 15? Do I absorb 10 past 10? This is now what we're faced with. But it's, again, so if you want to be unaffected in terms of the shoes industry, you have to know, A, where your brand ships from. Again, right now, all of my stock is in the US, but anything that comes in the future is now coming at a 20% extra charge. That now makes me have to think, what are my future prices? So, it could be that my brand remains unchanged right now, but come September, everything raises 20%. And again, this is hypothetical because I still don't know what I'm going to do because this is all very fresh. But just in terms of being consumers, you shouldn't panic. Obviously don't panic, because you either continue supporting a brand or you don't, depending on if they raise 20%, if they absorb it, if not. But as far as like buying online, just know, continue to know where it stands. Again, the $800 exemption is good for everywhere, with the exception of China and Hong Kong, which I believe has a 30% tariff under $800. So if you buy from brands like Yearn, who are under 800, if they, let's just call it 600, so that 600 will now be taxed, sadly, at what I believe is 5% plus 30%. I could be wrong because I don't know I only read 30, but if they're sticking to the rule like the way I get taxed as a company, which is 5% import duties plus the 20% EU tariff. But because there's really no import duty under 800, I assume you're only paying the 30% tariff. So therefore, a $600 shoe coming from China would now be a $780 shoe. Now, I will dare say that in all honesty, brands like Yearn, 30% on top of their price is still a great deal for the shoes you're getting. They were selling incredibly low to the point where they were crushing all their competition in terms of value. So even if you're paying the 30% tariff for a Chinese-made, handmade shoe, it's still a good deal. You're just not getting the steal of a price you were getting before, to be quite frank. $300 hand welted shoes out of China, now 30% more. Okay, $420 for a excuse me, not at $420. I was doing 40%. $390 for a hand welted shoe. You're still getting a great deal. So as far as now, on the flip side, a shoe from Acme, which goes above $800, now that's taxed at I don't recall the Chinese rate, but I want to say it was 54% in total. So it was 20% plus 34%. So a $2,000 Acme shoe, I don't think they're 2,000, but just to make math simple, a $2,000 Acme shoe at 54% is, you're now paying a little bit more than $1,000. So that's really going to hurt their company, unfortunately. Unless they, well, I won't say that on this podcast, but there are finaglings, so to speak. But yeah, so don't be worried to buy something from Europe right now, especially if it's under $800. If it's above $800, I would do your research, make sure you ask, make sure you check, because nobody likes paying tariffs. Nobody likes paying taxes. This is the reality of the world. Some people like paying taxes. I don't get that. But you may like paying taxes that help pave the roads, but nobody likes paying taxes on goods, because there's nothing added on that value that serves you outside of receiving the good. So again, don't panic. It's going to be a lot of changes. I'm trying not to panic, but this is greatly going to affect my brands and many brands similar to mine. Maybe somebody wants to start a factory. Who wants to create a factory here in America? You got the money, I'll help run it. Let me know. All jokes aside, I'm not an expert. I'm not an economist. I don't know if this will be better, be worse in the long run. Only time will tell. It's kind of the way I look at everything. For me, blow after blow after blow, it's just another blow. And hopefully other people will find ways to pivot and survive, and it won't harm their brand too much. But do be wary that it will hurt small brands. This greatly will hurt small brands. Big brands always find a way, usually. Truth be told, my prices will most likely inevitably raise in the coming future. I'm just being honest with you. because I don't think I have like a way around it. Way around. You're not supposed to have a way around it, so to speak. And like they say, the only thing certain is death and taxes. And yeah, I'm not. There's no way, no real way around the taxes, unless I, brought each pair that I purchased in my suitcase. But then it would be insanely expensive flying all those pairs. Sorry, I'm making bad jokes, but the reality is, as an individual consumer buying from European brands under $800, you have nothing to worry about. If you are importing stuff over $800 value, you now have to think twice about that because there will be added taxes. Again, this will affect small brands similar to mine, Carmina, me, Meerman, brands that have stores, brands that import from Europe into the US to resell to the US consumer. Most likely prices will be going up pretty soon. So do stay tuned for that. Support your small businesses. Support them now, because right now is when the prices won't change, because most of those businesses, me, Meerman, Carmina, I use those because those are the three closest to me. TLB, for example, is not, because they don't have a stock in America. Nothing has changed for them in reality. Unless you buy 2 pairs of TLBs, you'll now be getting hit with a heavier tax bill. 1 pair still flies under the $800 exemption. But, Meerman, Carmina, me. Carmina has 1, 2, 3 shops in the US. Meerman has 1. I have my storage facility. And we all have stock right now that's been paid for at the pre-20% tax rate. So that will go as normal, I think. I don't think any of us are going to raise our prices next week. But what you have to think is future stock coming will most likely be more expensive. So again, don't let that change the way you support the business, not my business, excuse me, the industry. Now more than ever, we need to support smaller makers, because this will affect their businesses. In the sense, don't let it negatively affect your supporting of the industry by not buying, and again, I don't say that, what's the word? I don't say that lightly, because these are crazy times and we're seeing a stock market crash. Even I lost some money there. We're all kind of like, a bit, not worrisome, but thoughtful. So again, just sharing my thoughts. This is happening. It's happened. There will be causes and effects. Be smart. Don't stop supporting. Don't not buy because you don't know. If you have a question, ask a small brand, reach out, email them. See, is this change affecting me right now when I buy? Wherever it's shipping from, know where the products are shipping from. If they're already in the US, you don't have to pay anything extra. If they're importing, you're gonna have to pay if they go over 800. If they're in China or Hong Kong, you're gonna have to pay no matter what. To all these guys whose wives love to buy Shein, like my wife, they're all gonna have to pay 30%. So yes, the tariffs and what it means to you. Consider yourself lucky if for this particular talk, it doesn't mean anything to you. You buy, for example, if you're a guy that only buys from TLB and buys 1 pair at a time, nothing has changed for you. And most likely, TLB won't raise their prices because nothing has changed for them, because they're based in Spain and ship from Spain. And unless a client is buying 2 to 3 to 4 pairs at a time, chances are, if you're buying 4 pairs at a time, you got a bit of coin anyways, and you really don't care, so you do it anyway. But yeah. Anyway, I will try to do more podcasts. I like to be able to share my mind, and I think some of you enjoy it as well. Sometimes I ramble on. I do like a bit of Led Zeppelin, and full of bad jokes today, but just trying to keep things light because these are stressful times. But such as life and so has been the last 5 years. Anyway, Don't worry, everything will always get better. Sometimes in life, in the roller coaster of life, we have the dips and then we go to the highs. So let's all expect some highs soon, but do be warned, there will be changes coming soon. I've been saying it for a long time that prices will rise. I didn't know this was going to happen, but prices will rise nonetheless because, believe it or not, the world is getting more expensive all the time. Leathers continue to rise year after year. Factories rise their costs. Everything's constantly rising. So, not to be the bearer of bad news, but I dare say enjoy the prices now while they're as low as they are, because there will be some companies adding a minimum 20% to their prices. All right, I think I've talked enough for today on that subject. Again, do stay tuned for more. I always have more coming. With regards to this podcast, please do not leave me any silly comments about anything political. I really don't care. It's not my thing. This is a shoe podcast. But I hope you, I don't know, have enjoyed. Some people wanted to hear my thoughts on it. To be honest, with all the craziness that has gone on in the last 5 years, I try no longer to stress, because as you get older, stress is the thing that kills you. So I'm trying to stay as young as possible. I try to live in the moment day by day, not think too hard about things I cannot control. I suggest you do the same. Thank you as always. Please do feel free to leave your thoughts. If you know more than I do about it, please feel free to leave your expertise as well, because we're all kind of in this up in the air moment. And, there's a lot of speculation. So yeah, please do like, please do subscribe if you haven't already. Please do share your feedback. And if you feel so inclined, please do contribute to the Patreon page. Thank you as always for tuning in, and do stay tuned for more. Take care. Bye-bye.